really good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining this session. You are in session 2. It's the Choose You Activating Excitement for Student Choice. So I hope you are in the right session that you wanted to be in. I am Leslie Wisdom. I will be your Zoom room host today. So I just wanted to go over a couple of logistics and housekeeping. You will be able to write responses in the chat in the Zoom feature, as well as the Whova app feature. So our speaker will only be able to see the chat in the Zoom. And if you put questions into the Whova or chat into the Whova, I'll just be able to relay that information to our speaker today. So just know that. You will, the preference is to stay muted during the presentation. There will be some times where you can unmute yourself and ask a question to our presenter, and she'll let you know when that time is. If you haven't already noticed that the materials are already in the Whova app, and if there's any links shared throughout, it will probably be shared in the chat of the Zoom as well as the chat in the Whova. So I'll just make sure that whatever's shared in the chat, if it's a link, I'll also share it in the Whova platform so you have access to that. At the end of today's session, if you wouldn't mind, in the Whova application underneath the title of the breakout, it says rate session. We would love for you to rate the session after you've had a chance to participate in it, of course. And I think that's all the housekeeping that I have. And now I'm going to turn it over to our wonderful guest speaker, Cassiopeia Guthrie. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Leslie. I really appreciate the lovely introduction. And welcome everyone to Choose You, Activating Excitement for Student Choice. I am thrilled to speak with you today about a campaign which was developed to allow middle school students to explore their own interests and to subsequently select high school courses that are the best fit for what they love, with a focus on AVID, CTE, and electives pathways. I'm really thankful that you've decided to spend this session with me. But in advance of our discussion, I'd like to invite you to join in the following reflection, a land acknowledgement. Land acknowledgement is not a new practice, but it's one you may be unfamiliar with. As we begin this session, it's important to note that this event today, while virtual, is being hosted in a region within the traditional and ancestral homelands of the Kumeyaay Luiseno people. Today, the local tribes continue to contribute to the life of their community, to celebrate their heritage, to practice their traditions, and to care for the land and waterways here in San Diego. Please take a moment to consider the many legacies of displacement and genocide, and remain cognizant of the fact that we cannot separate overlapping histories of violence that settler colonialism has brought to these lands, spurred by oppression, erasure, racialized transatlantic enslavement, and forced migration. Through this land acknowledgement, we seek to pay our respects to the elders, to recommit ourselves to the important work of dismantling systems of oppression within our region, and to acknowledge the cultural legacy of the Kumeyaay and Luiseno people. We thank them for their stewardship, and we celebrate their contributions, past, present, and future. These acknowledgements commit us to a lifetime of anti-racist work. So on that note, thank you again so much for being here. I'm Cassiopeia Guthrie. My pronouns are she, her, and hers, and I'm a district ed tech TOSA in the Escondido Union High School District. I hold an executive MBA as well as K-12 teaching credentials and dual emphases in middle level education and biliteracy. I'm a National Geographic and Leading Edge certified educator, and I have a pretty non-traditional background because I've explored dual career paths in secondary education and also in marketing communications, project management, and organizational strategy. In fact, I came back to education off of a career overseeing social media and a social PR team for a full-service PR and branding agency. I also have served as a marketing communications manager and a project manager for international textile agencies. And so I've had the incredible opportunity to tie my passions for amplifying student choice to my expertise in facilitating events. The Choose You campaign is one of several campaigns that I've developed and led on behalf of the Educational Services Department at our District Service Center, working hand in hand with our Director of College and Career Readiness, Mia Funk, and I'm really excited to share it with you today. As you can see from our agenda, Today, we're going to be briefly highlighting our intended outcomes. We'll discuss how the Choose You campaign came to be, the context, goals, rationale for it, considerations we had to include, and how we chose to deploy it. And then as we discuss these different phases of the project, I'll be sharing some of our handling of it with you, and I hope you'll take the time to really ruminate on how you can apply different aspects to your own sites and districts, as well as come up with questions that I can address for you during our time here today. Today, my hope is that you'll get a better idea of what drove the founding of our Choose You campaign, what it entails, and of course, you'll start to consider different ways that you might craft a similar campaign or use elements from this one to encourage choice and to boost recruitment. Now, the Choose You campaign came about during the pandemic. Our school district was trying to identify how we, as a high school district offering school of choice, would ensure that students from our feeder district were aware of all of the options they had at our various comprehensive sites. We wanted them to be able to make a choice based on their own interests and talents. Activating student choice, again, that was the name of the game. However, as with all initiatives, we really wanted to keep the priorities at the forefront of our decision making, including these 3 state priorities shown here: access to an achievement and an enrollment in a broad course of study, student achievement, including CTE completers, and student engagement. We also needed to keep in mind that we had an LCAP goal of increasing the percentage of students enrolled in our CTE programs. As a district, we had not met this goal in 2019-2020. And then if you add in the unique opportunities associated with pandemic-era public education, we knew that we needed to get creative about recruitment for the programs and for our public high school district as a whole. We were dealing with circumstances beyond the norm, in addition to all of the normal challenges. This led to our identification of our overall goal, which was to generate an extensive, cohesive campaign, which was accessible and attractive to students and their families, while being delivered both synchronously and asynchronously. We needed to reach students from an outside K-8 feeder district and other external independent school sites to ensure that those students were able to explore options at a variety of comprehensive sites from which they'd be able to choose, and to facilitate a process by which those students could engage in conversations with their family members in order to make informed decisions. And we needed to do all of that without ever meeting in person. Our district mission statement highlights college, career, and life, which tie in closely to AVID, CTE, and electives, and therefore we planned to feature all 3 of these departments in our Choose You campaign. Beyond this, it was important to us that our campaign additionally honored student choice, increased engagement in school during a time where students were participating in blended and online learning, encouraged short-term and long-term achievement, increased the buzz about our district and helped to boost recruitment both at our school and our specialty programs, and helped maintain student interest in a variety of courses. We wanted to be able to continue to offer all of those classes. Yes, we knew that these goals were lofty, and yet tackling each of them at once was really the best option for ensuring that students were registering at our sites and doing so in classes that truly excited them, but without having in-person events. Now, I want to pause for a moment to just acknowledge that early on, we needed to brainstorm the types of resources that would be included in a campaign of this magnitude. As you can see, some of these resources would be delivered synchronously. They'd be intended to support the blended and online sessions that we would do with future potential students, whereas others were asynchronous and would help support students exploring the elements at home with their families. For our synchronous sessions, we planned to hold 1,000-member Zooms. We wanted to include an introductory video launch in these live assemblies on 3 subsequent weeks. We also knew that we need some sort of navigational mechanism, which was intended to help students navigate to a variety of different live online session offerings without losing middle schoolers in that click abyss. We also needed a variety of presentations by our comprehensive high school program staff members and the students who participate in those programs. And we would have to gather follow-up resources for those programs, applications, interview information, entrance tests. We also knew that we would need to be able to staff these large-scale synchronous events, not just from a logistical end as a large-scale assembly, but also the smaller program-specific breakouts. And also, they were taking place during a time where our program leads were slated to be actually teaching. Additionally, on the asynchronous side, we needed a space where resources could be aggregated, a variety of videos and materials that would be produced outside of that synchronous time frame and would be able to be viewed, and of course, communications with families and students so that they were aware of the campaign that was launching and they were able to engage in it in an authentic way with their students. Now, I had mentioned previously that for a campaign of this size, it was very important for us to ensure that we weren't speaking to dead air. That is to say, we wanted to make sure that the appropriate audience was in the room where it happens, both physically and metaphorically, for all of the content that we were generating. So it was important to us that we weren't launching this campaign without really giving due consideration to our audience needs. Where were students and guardians consuming their media? What potential channels made the most sense for deployment? Based on the market analysis shown here, as well as additional research about our audiences, we ultimately opted for in-person, video, written, phone, email, and social media outputs for this campaign. I do want to take a moment here to allow you to review the content that is on this screen and also to add any questions that you may have about this information to the Zoom chat. Hopefully you've had a little bit of an opportunity to review the consumption profiles of students and guardians based on current data. And I hope you also had a chance to review those potential channels to kind of get an idea of what we were planning to do for each of those channels in terms of content. This was kind of a high level beginning starting point for us in terms of deciding what we were going to create for the course of this campaign. Now, please recall that this is at a time where everything was more or less locked down. We're just beginning to come back together for meetings in person, but at this point in time, all instruction was still happening online. In fact, in-person instruction hadn't happened in almost a year. So how are we going to tackle this beast? Well, the short answer is we decided to partner with our feeder district to capitalize on the transition from their instructional time, their synchronous time, to asynchronous time in their day. That is to say, we would roll out an asynchronous video introduction, which would be shared in 8th grade classrooms. And then we would schedule synchronous sessions on Mondays at 8:30 a.m. This was right during a transitional time for those middle school classrooms. This was a warm handoff. So they would go to their advisory or their first period class. And then at the end of the class, they would click a link and the entire class would go to an assembly together. This allowed us to get most of the students into the space where we were having these conversations. Now, these are the first two steps of our 4-part campaign rollout, which you can see here again. This was kind of masquerading in some ways as an in-person session. And because of how we timed these sessions, we were able to do 3 subsequent Monday synchronous sessions focused on AVID, CTE, and electives one at a time. Spreading out our deployment by department allowed us to have continued and ongoing contact with middle schoolers, to train them on a continued basis about how to navigate the resources and to facilitate a rotation of classroom coverage to our different departments so that our instructional time was covered. The final 2 elements were a bit more straightforward. We'd share a follow-up on the campaign and resources via social media, a website, handouts, a communication tool called Peachjar, and phone and email, and then would host site-specific registration events. Now, it's worth mentioning that we're going to circle back around later to the website portion because we did ultimately decide that we would create a single space where all of our Choose You resources would be housed. So I'll explain a little bit more what that looked like in detail in just a few minutes. Now, I think you probably have the idea by now that this campaign was pretty robust and had a lot of moving pieces. And this campaign overview calendar that we initially presented to district leadership really helps to model that. That said, it seems like it would be more useful to show you a week-by-week basis of how the campaign rollout was actually looking like. You can see here in the first week, we presented our campaign to our stakeholders. We began arranging our site assets as a collection of videos, photos, slideshows, a curated list of students who might be available for talkbacks and question and answer sessions. We also began to work on updating our district resources, gathering our handouts, preparing our campaigns, and beginning to collect resources from AVID, CTE, and electives. In week 2, we deployed our introductory video by sending that link along with instructions to our feeder schools. We asked our middle school partners to share the resources via Google Classroom in advance of our large-scale presentation. Again, their students were also in a blended learning environment. And we asked them to consider spending some time with their students to review that video during their synchronous time. In weeks 3, 4, and 5, we initiated our schedule of live focus sessions, again, starting with that warm handoff from their live classroom morning session and building in an attention grabber video, a brief slide deck just to highlight the focus of the day, whether it was AVID or CTE or electives, and then we moved into breakout sessions for presentations and Q&A. At the close of the campaign, we finally sent resources to our feeder schools, a handout with a QR code, a variety of videos, materials, and FAQs, and a script that our school sites could use when they were talking about registration and student choice. We knew that the ask of a program like this could quickly spiral out of control, so we focused on asking the school sites to do only the things on the right of the screen, finding teachers willing to present, finding students who could speak authoritatively about the programs and answer questions for incoming 9th graders, finding activities and program leaders who could leverage their communication channels, and speaking with our counseling department who were best suited to facilitate registration in alignment with the goals of the program. Everything else, from live presentations to logistical support to template content for all print and web components, campaign communications, all of that was provided by educational services at the district level, all the way down to the bilingual wording that they could use in their callouts and newsletters and instructional videos to assist families in navigating the resources. We're going to watch a launch video together so that you can get an idea of some of the design elements that were incorporated into our campaign. Please note in particular how we tie in a comic book theme of draw yourself into a future that excites you. High energy music, cartoonized images of our programs, and a brief, clear explanation of both the process and some of the choices that they will have. All of this was done intentionally to tie into interests for this age group, but also was intended to be kept under 3 minutes.
High school is coming up. Are you getting excited? Whether you're looking ahead to where you're going to go to college, what you want to do for your career, or how to make your life everything you want it to be, your new school is here to be your partner in the process. In the next 4 years, you'll have a chance to draw yourself into a future that excites you. What do you think you want to do? What do you think you'd be good at? What do you think you'd like to explore? High school is about getting a jump start on your future and learning who you are. There's no better way to do that than through the exploration of you. In EUHSD, our high schools are committed to empowering every student to graduate, prepared for college, career, and life through excellence in learning. Animation, agriculture, automotive, AVID, no matter where your interests lie in the alphabet, we have choices that will get you excited to come to school. Woodshop, pastry, or pasta making? Get a head start on a career you love and make some new friends along the way. Are you hoping to pursue a professional career? Do you want to be a doctor, a lawyer, a teacher, president? AVID will help you get a head start on preparing for the college of your dreams. Or work with your hands. Dive into an experiential class and grab that hands-on experience that's going to get you a job that you absolutely love right out of high school. Do you enjoy design, graphics, or computer programming? We have choices for you too. Or hop on camera, write for the school newspaper, or learn how to take professional photos. ¿Hablas español? Est-ce que tu parles le français? Learn a foreign language and be one step closer to your seal of biliteracy at graduation. Why not indulge all of your creative outlets through programs like dance, drama, art, ceramics, music, and more? That's right, you get to choose from a huge list of programs that really celebrate your interests. So what's coming your way in this process? First, today you've heard a little bit more about which options you have to choose from. In the coming weeks, you'll get to hop into a Zoom with the teachers and students from Escondido, Orange Glen, and San Pasqual, where you can ask your questions and hear more about specific programs. Next, you'll talk about your choices with your family. And finally, you'll log in on February 24th to make your choice. No matter which program you decide is best for you, we know you're going to have a great time at high school in the Escondido Union High School District, and we can't wait to hear what you decide when you choose you.
Hopefully this video has given you an idea of what types of resources and engagements we were trying to facilitate for students to explore.
High school is coming up.
Of course, introducing the campaign and launching it was just intended to develop an appetite. The real meal would follow immediately after, when we were joined by our fabulous staff and student presenters. We wanted to make sure that each program was being presented with parity, so that students could truly make a decision based on their interests, their student choice, the genius they were bringing to the table, rather than the differing resources being presented. Therefore, we planned an opportunity to send students directly from our warm handoff welcome session and introductions to breakout rooms, each of which would have similar parameters. We provided a template to each program advisor, a standardized slideshow that was ready for them to customize. We reminded them again that the purpose of the presentation was to be a highlight reel, to whet the palate for students who were there to taste test. We had them, for example, include top 10 reasons to join the program, or encourage them to build in an interactive virtual activity. These presentations were done by an adult advisor or teacher, but then were followed up right away with live student testimonials and question and answer sessions. We really wanted our incoming freshmen to be able to identify if this was the flavor du jour or if maybe something else might be a better fit for them. Now, it was important to us that all of these presentations be recorded and closed captioned and translated as well, so there would be open access for our educational community. And so to facilitate that, we asked our teacher presenters to remit the videos to us within a day so that we could caption and post them for public consumption. Here's an example of the template slideshow that we provided. We wanted to make sure that our teachers had what they needed in order to make their program really shine. But again, also to help ensure that the decisions that students were making were truly based on their own personal interests and choices rather than external factors. If honoring student choice and encouraging student engagement were to be focus areas, we knew that the presentation of the plate, the framing of it, so to speak, really needed to complement that and not detract from it. You may recall from earlier in our presentation that I was talking a bit about the navigational mechanism, correct? So here's the thing. It does us absolutely no good to have fabulous presenters and gorgeous presentations if the students don't make it there. We needed our middle school assembly attendees to be able to navigate a clear shot from one virtual space to another virtual space in order to make sure that they were able to be a live audience member in these Choose You presentations. To make this simple for our feeder district students who were operating on iPads and using Google Workspace, we created a Google Slides document and linked buttons to the various pages. We provided a link in the chat and on the screen to our student attendees, which took them to a page that looked like the one at the top right of the screen, where they would click on a circle button for the school they believed that they would be attending. Again, our district is school of choice, and students can select from any of our comprehensive high schools, and we have a couple of other options outside of our 3 comprehensive schools. However, at this point in time, most students had a pretty good idea of where they were going to land, or they'd already committed to a site. So again, we'd instruct them to find a button for their school at the link and then click on it. Literally click on that circle. This would take them to a page like the one that you see at the bottom, a program page where we would have an additional button for each of the programs being highlighted in that session. For example, you can see here that there are 4 CTE program presentations taking place at one of our comprehensive sites, which included automotive technology, culinary arts, photo and video, and printing and graphics. And yes, some of those are combined programs who chose to present together. We told students, pick the one that sounds like it's most interesting to you as a person. So if you think, for example, that you might like to be a chef and you want to cook, try culinary arts. If you think you'd like to learn about graphic design, choose printing and graphics. Clicking the rectangle button would take them directly to the Zoom call where the program presentations were taking place. Easy peasy. Of course, the choices were a little different from school to school, but this process allowed all of the students in our assembly to individually, in 2 clicks, find their way to the area that interested them most and to hear a live presentation from teachers and students. By the way, here's the Google Slides link that we used for this process with those Zoom links redacted so that you don't accidentally join another call. So if you want to take a peek at it, you absolutely can. The link again is bit.ly/chooseeuhsd21, and the entire thing is lowercase. So again, bit.ly/chooseeuhsd21, and we can add that to the chat as well. I'm going to type it in, so you'll have to copy and paste this one into your browser window, but there's that link for you. Now, if you choose to do something similar, I would advise that you make sure that your slide deck is set first so that anyone with the link can view. And make sure that you direct link to presentation mode so that it doesn't go to the regular Google Slides page, but rather to a presentation slide that looks like this one. Finally, I recommend using a short URL like a bit.ly link, as I have here, to both keep it simple and also to track analytics. Now, I did want to mention that we asked our presenters to keep their presentations to under 30 minutes max, and that included any activities and questions and answer sessions. But afterwards, the presenters knew that they were releasing students to their regularly scheduled asynchronous work time for school. So these presentations really marked the end of the time that we were all spending together, and they didn't have to redirect them anywhere else. It wasn't until the next week that we got to see them again for a different department. And again, if you want to open that link, I have added it to the chat. You can just poke around if you would like, and we'll also make sure that we provide all of these later as well if you'd like to take a peek. Now, as I mentioned previously, it was really important for us that students and their parents would be able to access these resources asynchronously as well in order to make their most informed decisions. For example, if a student attended the photo and video CTE session, but later decided that they might have been more interested in print and graphics, we wanted them to have the chance to be able to explore both of those ideas before making a choice. We facilitated this by creating a standalone website with all of the Choose You resources, which is shown here. This website housed all of the recorded presentations from our Choose You assemblies, slideshows, pictures, even instructions for how to make their choices. We did ask students to click on the link while they were live with us in our sessions and to bookmark it. This would make it so it'd be easier for them to review it at home with their grown-ups. Students were so excited to hear that the bookmarked page was going to continue to evolve and grow over time as we received additional resources from our different program presenters. I will give you some time to review this resource in just a few minutes. But just so that you're aware, the resources that we did collect for site program pages included these items here. So slide decks from their presentation recordings, or any program highlight videos that they shared, photos that had been cartoonized, flyers, applications, contact information for program leads, even the course ID codes that they would need during registration. We wanted to make it as easy as possible for them to know what came next when they were finding their perfect fit. We also wanted to make sure that our families were really comfortable in how to navigate that Choose You website, and we created several videos, including this brief one that I'll share in a second, which highlights the basic features of the site. We shared this video in addition to a bilingual one, which explained how to access closed captioning and native language features in our embedded videos. We can take a peek at it together because I think it helps to delineate some of the navigational features that we built into the Choose You website. And then afterwards, we'll take a look at the website together. I'll give you a few minutes to navigate, ask any questions you may have, just so that you can see those elements in living color.
We've loved having you be a part of our Choose You assemblies this month. Now that you've seen the AVID, CTE, and elective presentations, we're excited to share that if you visit the Choose You website, you're going to be able to click on the name of your school to see more information about all of the programs available to you. Click on the name of the school in the navigation at the top of the page. Then select the icon that relates to the program that you would like to learn more about. When you get to that page, you're going to notice a variety of resources, including videos, information about which classes to register for, and additional ways to get your questions answered. We're looking forward to seeing what you choose when you choose you. We've loved having
There we go. Now, I did want to give you a couple of moments to review that website right now. In fact, I'll stick around right here. I want to give you a couple of minutes to take a look at that website. I did add the link to the chat for you. And let's take maybe 2 to 3 minutes just to poke around. And if you do have any questions as you're reviewing, please feel free to add them to the chat and I would be more than happy to answer those questions. So we'll take about 2 to 3 minutes. We'll be back together at around 12:32. All right, circling back around, I don't see any questions just yet in the Zoom chat. Please do remember to drop it in the Zoom chat if you do have any questions so that I can see them, but you can continue to add them there as we continue. So I briefly shared this overview campaign calendar earlier before you had all this context. So I wanted to circle around to it again now that we've discussed the campaign at some length. You can see that we have January shown at the top, and that was all of the preparation work, getting everything ready to launch. By February, we were jumping into our 3 department live assembly sessions. We shared our AVID programs on February 1st and posted the resources to our site by the 2nd. We shared CTE on the 8th and posted on the 9th. And the week of the 15th, we were on recess. So we focused on more general Choose You correspondence and polishing and passing along all of our print materials. And then finally, the week of February 22nd, we shared electives, which again were posted a day later. Our registration dates were then launched on February 24th. So you can see over the course of January 19th through February 24th, all of these different resources were developed and deployed. If this is something you wanted to do in your district, I would advise taking a little bit more time than that. Now, this information also went home to families in the flyer shown here. This flyer was English and Spanish, and it featured the highlights of the program, a QR code and bit.ly link directing families to the Choose You website, and a reminder of the mission to explore the choices and to select something that made them excited to come to school. These were sent home in print through e-newsletter and through Google Classroom. And their information was also leveraged via social media and phone calls. I'll give you a moment just so you can read through this handout. Again, very general, but we wanted to make sure that we were still reminding students that the choice was theirs. We really wanted to activate their opportunity to make selections that worked best for them. Now, speaking of social media, there was also a comprehensive campaign that was targeted at parents and students, and that deserves a comprehensive social media plan. So we planned 4 weeks of posts shown here. These posts were shared on all of our district platforms over the course of the campaign, as well as the individual program social media channels when applicable. Content for this plan included videos, graphics, and photos like these ones, which I'll give you a moment to read. So you can see that these continued posts had a lot of the same language that we were using in the campaign. They had a lot of the same imagery, and they still really met those overall branding ideas that we had incorporated from the beginning. We also had listicles, or a combination of lists and articles with numbered lists, testimonials, quotes, links. Once again, I'll take a moment just so that you can read through these elements. Now, once again, for parity, we wanted to make sure that each program had an equivalent number of posts that were going up and content that was relatively similar from program to program. We really tried to make sure that we were identifying the ways in which those programs were differentiated so that the student choice was truly based on what the program was about. I also wanted to add that we were thrilled with the KPIs, or key performance indicators. In fact, you can see here how our impressions and reach were impacted by the specific content shared during the campaign. You'll notice these spikes correspond with those posts. We had a goal of increasing buzz about our programs and our schools, and it is obvious that people were seeing information about our programs and schools during this time, and that's really exciting. Fantastic. So next up, I want to give you an opportunity to engage in an activity where we share out some ideas about how you might use elements from this campaign moving forward. And we're going to do this using a tool called Jamboard, which you may be familiar with already. It's going to allow us to add collaboratively to a document at the same time. Now, if you're not already familiar with Jamboard, it's a virtual whiteboard, a tool that allows you to work collaboratively with a group of people online. This is a great one for a classroom because it is part of Google Suite and it is easy to share, to change permissions, and to engage with. So you're going to see a link on the page which will take you to a browser tab to access the Jamboard. And you can just go ahead and type in that particular link right there. And I'm adding it to the chat as well. Again, it's bit.ly/chooseyoujam. It'll take you to a browser tab to access the Jamboard. Now, once there, you're going to arrive here on a page which has a bar on the left-hand side and also a section at the top. And I'm going to go ahead and describe those for you. Once again, that bar on the left-hand side of the screen has a series of buttons, and each button does something different. So please feel free to use the text feature, the sticky notes, to add a related picture, whatever you'd like. I know it's fun to play. Or just follow the directions and use this button right here to grab a sticky that you can type on. You'll also see a dashboard at the center of the top of the screen, and clicking the arrows from side to side will allow you to toggle between the two different question pages. Page 1 is going to include items that you feel you're taking away from the session. So I have two questions here. The first one is, how might you use a similar campaign or elements of this campaign to encourage choice and boost recruitment? And the second question is, what's one takeaway you can use immediately after viewing this session? And then the second page has a space where you can add any questions that you'd like to have answered, and I'll go ahead and answer those for you. Please go ahead and get started contributing to this. We're again going to take about 10 minutes. I want to give you really the opportunity to drop those elements in. But in the second half of those 10 minutes, I'm going to work to answer some of those questions that you're popping in or to address some of your ideas. So again, we'll take maybe 5-ish minutes of private reasoning time to work on this, and then I will continue to answer those questions as they appear. Great question, Leslie. I see that appearing in the chat. Who created the social media content for each of the programs? I guess that is the benefit of having a project manager who is also a social media manager. I created the social media content, and as I mentioned at the beginning, I come from a dual career background, and so I came very equipped with what I wanted to do, was able to do an analysis of our social media channels in tandem with our communications team, and ultimately to create and select those elements. Yeah, that's a perfect example. So again, if you have questions like that, you can go ahead and hop over to the Jamboard, and you can add them right here on slide 2 by clicking these buttons at the top. And again, we'll take about 5 minutes for just some quiet reasoning time. I guess we're down to about 4 now, and then we will hop in and answer some of those questions and talk about some of those ideas. Thanks again. So it's about 4 minutes. We still do have a couple of moments. It looks like there are a couple of questions that have come up though, so I wanted to make sure that we did address those questions. So you can see here we have these comments, and by the way, your comments will appear live. So if there's anything that you want to add, please feel free to do that while we're looking at it together, and they will pop up on the screen, and that's also very exciting. So if you've never used Jamboard before, it's a super fun ed tech tool that you can use to engage with groups of individuals, and you can even use in your team meetings or classes. So you can see here on the share out page, it says here in this yellow post-it, it says, I love this campaign for incoming freshmen. I'm already planning on trying to create something similar for them. I love that. Thank you so much. Please let me know if you do have any questions, and all of my contact information will be out there later. You can take a peek. We have the question, is this video going to be shared with us in your PowerPoint? And thank you so much, Leslie, for answering that in the chat. She says, yes, the PowerPoint is already available in Whova near the bottom of the session page, and the recordings will also be added to Whova at a later date, probably by next week. And again, if you do have any specific questions about elements, or if there's anything that you'd like to share with a colleague in your district, we are really interested in being a support to you to any extent possible, and especially as we move into a year where we are working in person in our classrooms, there are some changes that we're making as we move forward. So I'm happy to discuss those as well if that's something that anyone has any questions about. I see what's for one takeaway. We need to start using Snapchat since that's where our students are. Yeah, thank you so much for that note. Snapchat, Instagram, also TikTok. There are a lot of really great resources, and I think that you'll really have to have your district communications colleagues be evaluating what the right fit is for your particular school clientele and where families are. So our students are using Snapchat oftentimes, and the nature of Snapchat is that the platform operates in a very different way from the other platforms. And so you can certainly continue to have that there, but the way that the analytics work are very different. So yes, that is absolutely something that you should consider when you are initially doing your social media analysis with your district communications team. I work for a 7 through 12 school of choice, and I think including more of a social media platform will increase student and parent knowledge of what we offer. I love that. I think that that we really want to make sure that we're paying attention to where our families are operating, and we're understanding where they get their media and what kind of media they expect to see. And that was a major takeaway for us, was that it doesn't make sense for us to speak to an empty room. We need to make sure that what we are saying and the things that we are doing are immediately being received by and benefiting our audiences. So thank you so much for that great note. I do also see it'd be nice to help students use their career assessment results to find related high school programs that match their interests. I love that idea. I think that that is fantastic. I think especially since those career assessment tests oftentimes do help to articulate what some of those student interests are. And that might be a really great conversation to have in terms of student counseling when you're advising them to look at the different programs. It might be part of the language, right? Take a look at programs that directly relate to things that you have an interest in doing going forward. And remember, we took this fantastic career assessment test, and you may have had some possible careers you might want to explore as we're watching these sessions. So I really love that suggestion. Thank you. And I don't have any questions on here yet, but if they do pop up, I will continue to make sure that I am reviewing this on an ongoing basis. I do want to make sure that your questions are answered, and of course you can reach out directly to me as well with those questions. Well, generally speaking, everyone, thank you so much for engaging in that activity with me. Again, I will keep an eye out, but as I've shared today, ultimately, our Choose You program was developed because we wanted our incoming freshmen to choose something that they loved in their schedule. There's something that's just so magical about taking a class that really speaks to you and who you are as a person and gets you excited about your high school experience. And from an educational perspective, we knew that this campaign, if successful, would help us to hit all of these marks, right? Honoring student choice, increasing engagement with school, encouraging achievement, increasing buzz, boosting recruitment for our comprehensive and specialty sites, and maintaining student interest in a wide variety of courses. Whether students were interested in AVID, CTE programs, or electives, we knew that our offerings would meet them right where they felt they belonged. And I'm really excited to say that it worked. We received tremendous feedback from our feeder schools and families. They wanted to do it again this year. And our enrollment numbers are up in CTE, and best yet, we are in the process of launching the next iteration with a couple of changes. I do see a question before I move on to this last slide. I do see a question about, did high school AME students participate in the creation of promotional videos for our programs? And that is a really great question. We don't currently have a completer AME pathway in my district at any of my comprehensive sites. I was actually formerly a journalism teacher, and we were a CTE AME program. So we had just launched and hadn't gotten quite that far yet in terms of building that program out. But we did have students who did participate in a variety of different videos. They just weren't doing a lot of these big ones. We were working with a very, very short time frame. Moving forward, we're really excited to have a lot more student testimonials that are being built into our resources for this coming year. We're looking forward to recording those in advance, to creating commercial type videos for each school site, which highlight all of the different programs rather than just the ones that were able to or submitted content to us in this short time frame. And we're really excited about continuing to make sure that the parity of the presentation is equivalent for the programs, so we can really focus on student interests again instead of on a specific resource and things like that. But thank you so much for that question. I really, really appreciate that. And again, I will continue peeking at these other pages. I see that we still have no questions over there. But if you do have any questions, please feel free to add them as we move forward. And thank you again so much for your time and your support today. Please don't hesitate to stay on for the last few minutes, to unmute if you like, to ask any questions, and also to reach out if you have any questions as you begin your journey of activating additional student choice through a recruitment campaign like this. I know that you're already doing incredibly important and amazing work out there, and I can't wait to connect with you and to hear how you have moved forward with your own Choose You inspired journey. Thank you again so much for your time.
Yes, thank you so much to our presenter, Cassiopeia Guthrie. We really appreciate you being here today to share this wonderful campaign that your district took on. I think we all learned a lot. I just want to remind folks, if you, once you leave the session, if you don't mind, in the Whova platform, right underneath the session title, you'll see a button that says rate session. So if you wouldn't mind rating the session now that you've been a part of it, we'd love to get your feedback. Somebody asked about the PowerPoint, and that's already posted at the bottom of the session page as well. So you can download the PowerPoint presentation, and then the recordings will be uploaded at a later date tomorrow. As you know, we have our second day of presentations, so we probably won't get to uploading any of those recorded links until probably earlier mid next week. So check back soon and often. Thank you all for being a part of this session. We hope you enjoy the rest of the conference. And I'll stop the recording, but feel free to chime in if you have any questions or you want to talk about something.